Disclaimer: this video contains images and details that viewers may find distressing. Viewers' discretion is advised. The coaches were swaying violently. People could hardly stand as they moved through the carriages. Luggage fell from the racks above, the speed ever so increasing. Then there was an almighty bang, and the carriages were thrown on one side, pushed against the embankment. As the wreckage cleared, people lay dead, others lay injured. These are the words that would be described by several authors since the accident, showing what had happened in the moments leading up to it. Those words would be on the point and generalized, the real truth of the matter being far too graphic and brutal to show on YouTube. At approximately 1:45 on the 4th of June 1943, Elizabeth Coleman, Kathleen Graham, along with 111 other passengers, would be thrown from their seats as the train they were riding on left the rails. The sound of screeching metal and steam exhausting was intermingled with screams of pain and agony. As the dust settled, what would remain would, to this day, be the second worst rail disaster in New Zealand's history. 81 years later, this is the story of the Hyde Railway Disaster. The Otago Central Railway at its peak was 236 kilometres long, having stations at Dunedin, Wingatui, Middlemarch, Hyde, Ranfurly, Otago, Alexandra, Clyde, before terminating at Cromwell. I used Google Maps here as the road basically follows the path that the rail line originally took. This line had been fully constructed from Cromwell to Dunedin in 1921. The line was predominantly run by A, B and Q class locomotives, with the ABs being assigned mostly to the passenger work. The Qs had the distinction of being the first ever 462 Pacifics in the world, which in turn gave the Americans the inspiration to use the type, which in turn led to Greasley adopting the Pacifics on the LNER, but that's a story for another day. The route of the OCR is quite beautiful, with several viaducts, tunnels, and cuttings through the rugged Otago landscape. There are several gradients along this length, quite an arduous route through the landscape that is a video topic onto itself. New Zealand coal during the 1930s and 40s was of low quality coal that burned fast but not at a high temperature, leading to firemen having to shovel coal at a rapid pace, often being exhausted after a long day's work. A daily express service from Cromwell to Dunedin would depart at 9 AM and reach the end station by 5:20 PM. Which may seem like a long time, but in terms of the railway's steep terrain through the mountains, was to be expected. This express service would be introduced in 1936 to moderate success. Because of this, in 1937, the schedule was brought forward an extra 30 minutes, manageable for train crews, but it would have to work even harder than they previously would have, and this timetable change that was a factor in the accident. It was found to be common practice for locomotives crews to speed along the line, often being found anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes early at some stations, with high coal consumption found as a result. They would average maybe 50 miles per hour between some stations, a very high speed for such a steep, windy railway. On the morning of the 4th of June 1943, a Friday, AB 782 would be at Cromwell Station with the express, ready to depart. It was King's birthday weekend, so patrons were planning to use the long weekend to visit relatives or holiday at Dunedin, the largest town in the Otago region. AB 782 would be hauling 7 passenger carriages, 2 wagons of perishable freight, and a guards van. The engine crew on board would be swapped with a train bound back for Cromwell at Ranfurly, where a relief crew would be brought on for the train to Dunedin. The weather was cold that day, and since it was June, Otago winter had begun to set in, with a frost on the ground that morning with temperatures barely reaching above 15 degrees Celsius. The guard's whistle would blow at 9 AM, and with a reply whistle from the driver, the train would set off into infamy. The train would stop at Alexandra, Ranfurly, and at Hyde to pick up additional passengers. It was reported that the train had lost time, having to wait for train 345 from Dunedin due to a late porter, so the train had actually overshot the platform at Ranfurly. It would repeat this at every station following. John Corcoran and an unnamed fireman, who for these purposes shall be called John Smith, were waiting at the Ranfurly Hotel for the Express 582 to arrive. Both had had a bad sleep, arriving at 4:30 AM that morning, only to rise at what was to be estimated to be 8 AM for that morning. This was a common practice for the OCR, but the engine crews hated this. Corcoran had been spotted in the bar of the Ranfurly Hotel that morning with a drink, but nothing was said at the time. This was considered standard wake-up practice, as alcohol and drunk driving wasn't as serious as it is today. Corcoran would make up the lost time by these delays, setting the pieces at inevitability for the accident that followed. Records show that between the settlements of Toroiti and Hyde, the train completed this leg in 18 minutes, while the timetable had allowed for 32 minutes. The minimum permissible time, i.e. the absolute maximum speed that the driver could attain, was 22.2 minutes. The train would be 5 minutes late to Hyde, where it would wait a further 2 minutes as the guard noticed a man running across the fields to make it to the train, a Francis Kenny. It was because of the slight delay that the train would depart at 1:25 from Hyde with 113 passengers aboard. Throughout the journey, passengers reported that the train was going faster than usual, with the carriages swaying from side to side over the Otago central rails. Some passengers were considering getting off at the next station of Middlemarch and driving the rest of the way, but they would never get the chance. There was an emergency brake in one of the carriages, but there was a sign that imposed a £10 fine for improper use, which in today's money is about $550, so that was most likely why it was never activated on that fateful day. Between Hyde and Rock and Pillar, so named because of the Rock and Pillar formations later seen in The Hobbit, is an area of track known as straw cutting, a 183-metre radius curve with a speed limit of 30 miles per hour, imposed for all trains travelling through the cutting. As the train entered the cutting at roughly 1:45 p.m, passengers were called as the brakes slammed on a full emergency, with the engine's whistle blasting long and loud. The train wouldn't be able to fight the momentum, and AB 782 would leave the track dragging the 7 carriages with it. The guard's van and freight wagons would stay on the rails. The train continued for over 50 metres before finally the locomotive would come to rest, its boiler bursting, severely scalding Smith. 4 of the carriages would telescope into each other, their wooden frames splintering like eggshells, a sight not seen in New Zealand before but very familiar to the United States. One passenger was reported to have been thrown out of the carriage through one window, hit the edge of the cutting, and bounced back into a different carriage through another window. As the dust settled, it was very clear that there would be fatalities, so a local farmer set up the line on his horse as fast as he could back to Hyde, informing staff that there had been a calamity that had unfolded. Unfortunately, the reports had been mistranslated as only a few doctors arrived from Middlemarch expecting such a simple derailment, and maybe a few injuries. What they saw from the road was horrifying, with more aid and rescue quickly dispatched. It would be too late for some passengers, but with the help of other passengers, the medical crew and relief trains sent from Ranfurly and Middlemarch, lives were saved that day. Tragically, Pat Kenny would arrive on the scene to find his son Francis Kenny deceased, declared dead on impact from the derailment. The site was described as a bomb blast, with carriages on their sides, with the undercarriages ripped off from the force of the impact, one of them being widely reported in a survivor testimony as bending into an S shape, showing that a massive amount of force would have been required to achieve this fate. Rescue efforts would carry on for several days, working at all hours to free passengers trapped inside. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to save everyone, with 21 people dying due to the accident. Because of World War II conditions, loved ones and relatives would only find out about the disaster the following day. Soon the questions began to increase about how did this accident happen? Why did it happen? A board of inquiry was established by the New Zealand Railways to investigate the cause of the crash. Pat Kenny was the local farmer who owned the land where straw cutting was located. He had been working on his farm all his life, and on that day, from Gerald Kenny, one of his relatives, he was described as this. He had been listening to trains travelling up and down the line all of his life, and he knew something was wrong. It had always been steam on going up and steam off going down the hill. But this afternoon, the train had steam on going down the hill. It was speeding. Across many weeks and months, the interviews with the engine crews and passengers, it was found that Corcoran had been drunk driving, as evidenced by the bottles found in the locomotive cab, with anywhere between 2 to 8 depending on who you ask. Investigators would also found that the train had in fact been reaching an estimated speed of over 70 miles per hour when it entered the cutting, more than twice the legal speed limit. Because of John Smith's increased workload with the poor quality coal, it was likely he was far too busy to notice Corcoran drinking, which in turn led to this result. Corcoran would be charged with manslaughter, but due to technicality from the increased workload and pressure from the OCR during wartime conditions, he was only given 3 years in jail. John Smith and the guard would be given a reprimand for not trying to slow down the train when the speed was high, but not given a jail sentence. AB 782 would be repaired and put back into service on the OCR, being spotted hauling a local goods train in 1964 at Ranfurly, before being scrapped sometime in the 1970s following the introduction of railcars and DJ locomotives to the OCR. World War II would overshadow the news of the rail disaster, with hardly anyone outside of Otago knowing of the incident unfolding. The legacy of the Hyde Railway Disaster would have ended there, but for a different rail disaster on NZR. The Tangiwai Rail Disaster of 1953 had a memorial built to it to the victims during the 1980s, but nothing had ever been made for the Hyde Rail Disaster. This is where Elizabeth Coleman re-enters the picture, as she had been one of the survivors on the train, however she had lost her father and brother. A committee group led by Coleman and her associate Molly Winter was established in 1990. Members of the committee were set to work financing and building the memorial themselves out of local Otago rock to cut cost. The Hyde Railway Memorial will be unveiled on the 17th of February 1999. The cairn is 500 metres south of the accident site at Straw Cutting, being able to be accessed by the main road and Otago rail trail between Hyde and Rock and Pillow. Elizabeth Coleman would help to publish 3 books that helped with the research for this video, those being An Accident in Waiting, Stories of the Hyde Railway Disaster, and The Building of the Hyde Memorial, all being available to purchase from online sources. A link will be in the description. The Hyde Railway Disaster remains a black stain on the history of NZR, being the second deadliest rail disaster in New Zealand as of 2024. It highlighted the strain on engine crews keeping to the timetable, as well as the use for sufficient braking systems on carriages. Today, the cairn has 21 names permanently printed on brass, dedicated to the souls who expected a happy weekend of festivities in Dunedin, but would die on the side of a cutting in the middle of figurative nowhere. Survivors gather every year on the date of the accident of the memorial to remember those who passed away in the accident. Standing at the wreck site today at Straw Cutting, you'd hardly know the accident happened, but for a part of the embankment which had been cut up dramatically by the boiler of AB 782. There remains no pieces of the wreckage currently preserved in any form. Every single part was scrapped. The tragedy has largely been forgotten by NZ media, with only the Otago Daily Times publishing yearly stories of the incident. This video is dedicated to those lost, those being Robert Carr Sr., William Carson, Ethel Castles, Thomas Chisholm, Frederick Christopher, Thomas Clare, Thomas Connor, John Connor, Charles Douglas, John Frater, Francis Kinney, Duncan Lindsay, Duncan MacDonald, John Mescal, Charles Mackenzie, John O'Connor, Irene Wright, Desmond White, John White, and John Wright. As long as there are those who remember them, they shall never be forgotten. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.